What's going on? It's me, Hugh, and today we are back with a little bit of a session review of a session I had last night, which was just some 100 Zoom and 100 just normal tables. Dropped stakes down a little bit, had a bit of a losing day the day before that, sorry. So, best thing you can do when you're in a bit of a downswing, reset, go down a couple stakes, just get the confidence back, and then we can go back to 200, 500 and crush from there. But just going to go do a little session review. This is probably one of the most important ways you can improve in poker is just by going over your own sessions. Just record the screen, go over, compare it with some, GTO style stuff, so GTO Wizard or Pio Solver, whatever you have, and we'll go from that. All right, I don't really know how this video is going to work. We're just going to wait for some hands to pop up and then just kind of analyze them. All right, what we might do is might speed this one up a little bit just to get through some hands. Kings, here we are on the right. We got two big blinds under the gun. Oh, and aces in the left. A lot of action. 6.5 big blinds is my standard open. So, reason I do 6.5 for a two big blind open, basically when you don't really need to raise as big if it's an under the gun raise and you're in position. 3.5, three and a bit is completely fine. I do see people kind of default to 7.5. That is slightly big. If you are on the button, you can kind of polarize a little bit more since you do have the ultimate position. No one else can re-raise you from a bad position. But if you're not on the button, generally just 3 is completely fine. On the left, we have aces getting 4-bet, perfect spot, can't complain. But we'll just keep seeing what's going on. Aces, we are just going to rip into this time, it looks like. Get snapped off by ace-king off. Perfect. Happy days. On the right, we didn't see the action there. I just bet half pot. Can kind of do whatever you want. It's a bit more connected. Generally on straight boards, it is going to favor the out of position three bet caller. Generally, three better or the last aggressor is always going to have more of the ace, king, aces, kings, all of that. Kings as in we do in this case. So if there's a straight on board, it's generally going to favor the outer position. In saying that though, 10 high board, not really considered Broadway, so you do want to size up. If it's a single raise pot, you can kind of consider 10 as a Broadway card, which by default just goes towards the in position raiser. So since 10 is just slightly below the standard we do need, since 3-bet blind pots are going to be obviously a little bit lower stack to pot ratio, we do want to be sizing up here. So yeah, the half pot, completely fine. Could even go for a 3/4 pot if you really are feeling it, but it just depends on the roll. We do have my rollers on the bottom left. Wow, okay, it seems like I spazzed out a little bit on the right. Didn't overbet on the turn. Uh, Look, overbet, I don't have the heart in hand. Trying to get stacks in by the river, kind of price them in. Don't really like the overpot bet. I would personally, if I would go back, probably stick to an 3/4, another half pot range, and then you can kind of polarize more so on the river. Sizing up doesn't make like not a bad decision just because we don't have that heart in hand. So obviously if he does have the backdoor hearts, he is priced into call with that overbet. Well, he should be priced into call. A lot of people in 100 NL might just be folding because they don't really know what they should be doing. But in theory, I don't hate the overbet, although I'd probably size down to just pot or 75%. And yeah, he's just going to end up folding that one. Lucky though, because Ace of Hearts, probably the absolute worst card that could come off. All right, Ace King on the right. Once again, we're going to get 3-bet from the button. So, oh, yep, there we go. It's sick. Just getting some more games up because why not? So we're going to get 3-bet from that button. Oh, and 4-bet from the blind. So, Ace King. A lot of people are scared here. They don't really know what to do. I surprisingly would see a lot of people just flat the Ace King here, which is completely silly when you do have a cold 4-better. So when we're in the cutoff, we raise. Button is going to be 3-betting. We're always going to be 4-betting Ace King. No matter what, we are pretty much always going to be, unless we are rolling extremely low, maybe like a 90-10 with a 10% being a call and playing out of position. Even so, I'm not the biggest fan of it. But once we get cold 4-bet from the big blind, we can start to really consider folding, our jacks and things here. But I think queens plus, we're just going to kind of have to get it in. So queens, I'd probably just rip. Ace king off, obviously blocking aces and kings. We're very live against if the big blind is just 4-betting jacks or below or queens or below, we are just flipping. Can get a lot of fold equity as well. So let's say guy on our left has pocket tens. It's great. We're getting rid of a flip. And then the guy in the big blind, he might just have ace queen suited. A lot of equity we are removing, scooping up the blinds, never a bad thing. I mean, it is still like, 25 bigs we are picking up just if everyone folds. Ace King jamming is just super, super profitable here because it is going to fold out so much equity. And when we do get called, it's generally going to be a flip. Only time it sucks is obviously if they have aces or kings, but we do block that and we can't be scared of the monsters under the bed. So we do rip this one. It goes fold, fold. Happy days. Jack high flop. Can't complain about getting folds pre-flop with that one. Kings on the left. Bit of an action-packed session. Got some interesting action. A lot of things I am seeing in kind of this poll, and in fact, a lot of polls, even in 200 Zoom, I'm seeing these micro 3-bets where it's literally just a min click. So cut off raising 2 bigs. He's 50 big, so I don't hate it. Generally, I'd size up to about 2.3. You could even go 2.5 with this position. But when we're getting micro clicked in the big blind and then the small blind is flatting, we're just going to play our hand open. I'm never going to do none of this flatting thing. It's going to really incentivize the short stack to play a smaller pot with more people in it, just because he can kind of, when he has a hand such as like sevens, there's no real incentive of him just jamming because it's kind of hard to get. It's not the best thing in the possible world just jamming sevens into 3 other people who have already called a technical 3-bet. So yeah, we're just going to raise it up for this one. Sizing, don't need to go stupid crazy, but I do want to go kind of big. So let's say it was a standard like 2.3 and then a 7.5 big blind raise from the button. I would be looking at around 21 bigs from that big blind to be raising to, even to 23, depending on the player. In this case, I'm probably going to look around 15 bigs since there is a lot of dead money. We're not too scared of getting called. 20 bigs, completely fine. Anywhere between that, like 15 to 23, I guess. Kind of are on the more polarizing side. Oh, in fact, I do remember this hand. Uh, Preface for this hand, we do have a broken keyboard. The full stop I usually use, some reason just broke, no idea why. So I am using the other full stop. Did not remember in this hand, so you're going to see what happens in 3 seconds. And bang, there we go. 45 big blinds, pot size bet into a 4-bet pot. So just never what you want to do. 4-bet pots, you really want to be sizing down. There's so much polarity, especially when it goes like big card, kind of to middle, smallish cards. Really, really just that range absolutely smashes you. You have all the aces, kings, ace, king, obviously, all of that. And because of this, I was aiming to do a 10% pot bet. So originally I was meant to do 4.5 big blinds. Reason for that 10%, generally on these, I don't want to say dry because it's not the driest of boards, but for 4 bets, like he's never gonna have 6-8 of spades or these massive combo draws that we do see. Like probably the best hand he could have when we block the king of spades, ace queen of spades, which it's getting in either way. So you might as well just bet small because it keeps a lot of his worst range. Like let's say he has tens here, tens are gonna call 10%. If he's like a ace queen with the ace of spades and he's just called a 4-bet with ace queen off, he's going to have to call with that backdoor spade. Like there's so much he is just getting priced in. Let's say he hits a queen on the turn, he's now in an extra difficult spot, or even an ace because I've set. So 4.5 bigs, generally I like to do around that 10% to probably a 25% pot bet. So if you wanted to aim for around 12-ish, 10 to 12 bigs, completely fine as well. Was meant to be a 10%. Do not look at doing a pot size bet because you are going to get snap folds. All right, here we go. We're on that 4-table action now. We're going to finally get a little bit more hands. King 9 suited. You can open that one under the gun if you want. Assuming I just rolled for it, didn't really want to open it, maybe because I was playing 4 tables. That thing on the bottom right, the intelligent entertainment, that is me changing my Spotify music. I listen to music when I play. I recommend it. Just kind of helps you get into that flow state that we do enjoy. And yeah. Bottom left, Queen 6 suited. We do have a limper. A lot of limpers. Generally, what I'll do, I don't know why it wasn't working for the beginning part of the session, but you will see it a lot more into the second half, is I will tag players heaps. Basically, my tags, pink is I'm assuming they're a fish. Green is good to go, they are a fish. Orange is just pretty much they're regular. Red, super aggressive. They're the main 4 colors you really got to worry about. But if someone limps once, I'll chuck them into that pink category, just in case they might have accidentally misclicked call, they might have meant to raise, might have accidentally clicked call. We will make the mistake once again. Don't want to instantly put them into a fish category when he might not be. So I'll just click that color pink, I'll write limp, and then if he does it again, then change him to that green. But Queen 6, once someone is limping, obviously we do need to raise it up a little bit more. Anywhere up to 5 big blinds, I generally like when you are in position. 3 bigs, usually I'd raise 2.5. So if there's one limper, I don't mind raising to 3. Yeah, it kind of just depends on your own strategy. Queen six of hearts, though, I would be opening anyway. So on an ace high board, we are just going to be continuous C betting. When the flush draw comes in on the turn and the six of diamonds does hit, so now I have second pair, but he leads into me for 33% pot. I'm not the happiest. I'm pretty sure I would end up folding in this spot, and I'm pretty sure I did in theory. Yeah, I rolled for the call. Was probably going to be calling around 33% of the time with that one, but he's, what really are we ahead of in his range? Maybe 4-3 suited, and now he just has a up and down straight with a pair, which would have got there on the river, but obviously you can't look at being results orientated. But there's not a lot that we are ahead of. He either has two pair, an ace, or maybe a flush draw with, an overcard where we're not going to be comfortable even if he does c bet the river. So we're just going to chuck that fold in there. Pretty happy with that. One thing you are going to see a lot at this level, which you might not be used to seeing, is a lot of folding. There is a lot of folding and a lot of 3-bet, 4-betting. So probably the biggest mistake I see a lot of people, once again from my common mistakes video, people are just not aggressive enough. People are calling too much and not aggressive enough, and that leads to lots of these multi-way limp pots. You never want to be really in that situation. You can't really start to abuse theory and start, really showing off your knowledge when pots are multi-way. You have to do a lot of kind of weird things, like you have to size down heaps. There's a lot of 10%, 20% pot betting when really you should be wanting to size up and get a lot more money in, just because you do have to be a lot more cautious. And you can be a lot more aggressive in getting those pot size bets in and being super, super aggro and really putting people in tough positions when it is not multi-way. And it's a bit more fun because you get to find these creative lines where you wouldn't really in a multi-way pot. Alrighty, Queen Jack off on the bottom left. We got that limper once again. Alright, so King 4-4. We got two callers. And then top left, we have King Queen of Hearts that we are just opening under the gun for two big. So we'll stick to that bottom left screen. King 4-4, multi-way pot. Not really too happy with a multi-way, but what are you going to do when the big blind is just going to complete the action? Well, actually, no, there was a limper, so he isn't even completing the action. Just a bit of a fish player, in my opinion. I would probably tag him as well, but obviously, pretty dry board, really, really dry board, especially when I do have that jack of clubs, is going to be blocking a lot of those flush draws that would continue. So we are going to size down because it is multi-way. I believe I did a 33% pot, which we are, yep, cool. Did 33% pot. I would probably even size down to like 25%. I mean, 2.5 bigs to 3.1, really not going to make too much of a difference. But yeah, it's going to fold out a lot of good equity. So any ace highs, they should be in theory calling, but these weaker players generally might fold them, especially if they don't have a club in hand. Yeah, but a lot of these 5-7s or just random live cards that could just hit a pair on the turn and start being ahead of me, we are going to get to fold out. So chuck that one in and everyone folds. And then that top left, we have King, Queen of Hearts. We under the gun raise, and the cutoff goes to about 7 bigs. We are going to call that one. Generally, I like to raise King, Queen suited when it is a cutoff raise. Reason being is, yes, we do have a lot of equity, but there is also a lot of hands that we're not too great against. They might just have Ace, Queen off, which is going to be folding to that 4-bet. It's one of those kind of merge bet, quote unquote, areas where we are folding out a lot of equity that is better than us, but we are also getting a lot of things worse than us to call. So if they're a weaker player, they might call with, I mean, I know a jack popped up in this case, but like Queen Jack suited, something like that. Folds out a lot of pocket pairs where we are just flipping against it. So pocket, sevens plus, probably pocket tens are going to be calling that 4-bet, but pocket nines are in a weird spot where they're not too comfortable. They should, in theory, be calling, but a lot of people are going to be overfolding. So I really do prefer getting that 4-bet in, but we did roll low, probably 75% 4-bet and 25% just flat 3-bet out of position. Do flat, and we are just going to check it straight over to the aggressive. Jack 2-2, we do have the back door. King, Queen of Hearts kind of go either way. He obviously does have that betting lead. It is slightly less than 33% pot, which from, my kind of just street theory, if people aren't sticking to those bigger sizes and they are kind of sizing down slightly less than what they want to be doing, generally going to lean towards a weaker hand. And if they're slicing up slightly more than what they should be, slightly going to lean towards more of that strong hand. Obviously, it doesn't hold true in all scenarios, but it's kind of my general range of thought. Kind of could go either way with this one. Clubs, obviously, you are calling. Hearts, you're probably going to be calling just because you do have that backdoor 2 overs, backdoor straight. If you did obviously have diamonds or spades, probably just chuck that one straight in the bin. Jack of hearts on the turn. We have a bit of a weird position now. So we do have that flush draw, do have two overs, but it is a double paired board. Ironically, I think it is a really, really good card for us. We do have a lot more jacks in our range than he does. Obviously, thinking three betters, kings, queens, ace, king, yada, yada, yada. We do have a lot of those jack X's or those pocket pairs. So we're just going to see what he does. And when he checks it straight back over to us, he's kind of giving us the rain stick of betting. So we missed our draw. Obviously, it's not great that we have hearts because it stops his heart draws that he is going to instantly fold. And we just completely crashed the video. Sick. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. We are back. So king, queen, like I was saying, it sucks that we do have the hearts because obviously it's going to block his double heart range that he is obviously going to be snap folding that river with. But when he's checked it over, we do want to be value betting here with our, pretty much any pocket pair, and ace high, we're generally going to be chopping with. So we could be betting to try get a fold out of a chop. King high, obviously, we are losing to the majority of his range. I think this is low enough in our range to where we do want to be bluffing here. So we are going to size up, almost go for that pod size bet, probably around that 85%. I believe it's around there. Just chuck that one out and he's going to snap fold. Perfect. And we're going to go back to that bottom left hand because queen jack, we do have a little bit of decision making here. So I thought we just got snap folds. No, we did not. So when he ends up calling the flop, which we're going to have to wait for now to see when he calls. Jeez, this guy loves a tank. Okay, well, I guess this is a tell because he's like, oh, I don't know. Do I call? Do I not? Ace of spades rolls off. We do block the backdoor club, which is still possible. We do now pick up a gut shot, and the ace of spades is a card that really much smacks our range. We roll a 1, which is the absolute most aggressive number we can go, so we go for a half pot bet. Could even size down in theory. I reckon going to about 33% once again puts his king X into a lot of weird positions. So it probably makes more sense for our entire range to be sizing down here because the ace does hit us so well. He still does have a lot of fours that would be raising us, so we don't want to be putting too much money in. So if I was to go back, probably would size down to about 33%. This one I was kind of just, I'm assuming in the headspace of, oh, trying to scare bet him, big money, I have a good hand. Don't ever get into that headspace. Seems like I was though, but yeah, I reckon a 33% bet would be a lot better in this spot. And then he is going to fold here if we go forward a little bit. Yeah, he does fold. All right. So under the gun raise, we are on the button with sevens. If it's a 2x, generally we can start playing a little bit more of a call strategy on that button against an under the gun raise, just because their range is generally going to be so strong. We do have a lot of hands where, kind of such as this board, probably a little bit too high this board, but let's say it was like a 5, 6, 7 board, much better for our range to just be flatting there. We can't really be 3-betting every single hand. We obviously do have a lot of equity in our hands. We can't just be over folding. If it is that 2.5 open though, generally I prefer to go towards more of a 3-bet or fold strategy, but when it is just a min click open, we can start to implement a little bit more calling in position. If you are lower stakes, if you are sitting around that 10 NL, 25 NL, I would recommend just sticking to a 3-bet or fold strategy just for simplicity of, having an easy game plan. Obviously, the easier the game plan to implement, the easier it is going to be for you to pull off in game, and therefore it's going to be easier to make a bit more money. While, yes, in theory, this might make slightly more big blinds per 100 by 0.001111 or whatever, would you prefer to have to think about a bajillion different things or just have a super easy game plan, lose that tiny, tiny percent of a big blind and actually be able to win in games? I just like making things complicated, so that's why I like to implement these strategies. But yeah, sevens, he's going to check it right over to us. We do obviously have that big blind caller, which is going to put things into a little bit more of a weird position. In theory, though, let's assume that the big blind was out of this argument. We do want to be just checking back a lot of the time our pairs, even if we had, let's say, 10 jack here, because obviously he could have aces still, he could have kings. He should, in theory, be having a lot of traps. He should still have his sets, still should have his 2 pairs. So if we start launching off and betting absolutely every single value hand, A, makes us super easy to play against when if we bet, they can just instantly fold. And if we do get check raised here to a really weird spot, now we're in a really weird spot where we have 10 jack, we raise third pot to 2 big blinds. He check raises us 100% of the pot to like 13 bigs. we're not really too happy. We don't really want to. We obviously are calling with a backdoor straight and top pair, but we're never really super happy about that. And then he can really start to apply pressure, and because he does have that original raise kind of aggression, he can abuse that throughout the whole path of the hand. So we are going to be checking back a lot of the time, even in position, and with sevens we are. On the right, we do have ace king. We're going to get raised to 4 big blinds from the small blind. A little bit bigger than usual, but we are playing deep, so I don't hate it. He is 150 bigs, and as you can see, he does have that green tag, meaning he is a bit of a fish. He does have that 60% VPIP. I do only have a 10% at the moment, so don't look at that. It's pretty bad. But we are going to be 3-betting him to about 3x's bet in position. So we are going to 13 bigs, so slightly more than 3x. And he's going to make the call. Flop's going to come to 6 jack with 2 clubs and a spade. We do block both, which is nice. So check straight over to us. 26 bigs in the pot. We are just going to go for a check back. Reason we are going to go check back, obviously we do need to be trapping a percentage of the time. Ace king does have a lot of equity here. We can bet, but Jack does obviously hit his range a little bit. He still could have a whole bunch of pocket pairs. We are blocking the backdoor flushes, which is nice to have. It means if a club rolls off, we can start calling some bets or start bluffing a little bit more. But it's whatever. It's neither here nor there. I think rolling for a half pot C bet or just a check is pretty standard here. And for this time, we ended up checking. He's now going to bet into us for half pot. I would be calling this with ace high, even if I didn't think he was a super fish, just because even though we do, we do block both flush draws, we have a gut shot to overcards. It's just heaps of equity here. So we are just going to make the call. And when the river rolls off a 10 of hearts, he is going to sit here, think about it, and then he's going to check it right over. Do have ace on the left. We will come back to that hand. Do not worry. So when the 10 rolls off, we do block both flush draws, which is neither here nor there. Really doesn't matter at this point once the flushes don't really get there. He is checking it over. He is capping his range. A lot of people, they really need to be having a lot of, in theory at least, sets in this kind of line. They should be trapping a lot of 2 pairs, should be trapping a lot of sets. They should be trapping their own straights. Let's say they had 9-8 with a gut shot. They really should be trapping here. So we are going to size up, go for the maximum. And when he does cap himself, such as he has right now, we really can start to size up. I believe we jam all in, which I think should be probably the sizing like 80% of the... Yeah, we do jam in for 150 bigs effective. So we are jamming for about 3x pot, which I think should probably be the only size. A lot of people, once again, I don't see you guys sizing up enough. Don't see you guys going for those absolute maximum values. Let's say he has ace queen here. He's in a weird spot. Like, he needs to be flicking in a call a certain percentage of the time. Can be thinking like, oh, what are your bluffs in this spot? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I can have heaps of bluffs here, I guess. Just a whole bunch of, not really. It's not really too many bluffs, but you don't really need many bluffs. That's the thing. Like, a lot of the time you might think like, oh, I need to be balanced with this amount of bluffs to each value combo. But in reality, if they're a fish, they're going to find a call. It doesn't matter if you're bluffing or not. They're going to find a call somehow. They might find a certain blocker. They might think like, oh, I don't have a spade or a club here and I have a pair. So he might be bluffing all of his flush draws when in reality we aren't. And he just might overcall some stupid percentage of the time. He might just think, if for some reason, he might have like 6-5 and just might really think you're bluffing. Like, there's a lot of times people spaz off in these ranks. So just jamming in for the max value. Unfortunately, he does not call, but I think going for that absolute maximum value is, pivotal. Yes, we could argue, oh, if we bet half pot, he's going to call 100% of the time. But let's think of it like this. If we bet 3 times the pot and we get called only 1 in 4 times, we're getting so much more than if we were to bet only half a pot and he was to call those 4 times. So if we're betting 25 bigs, he calls it 4 times, that's only 100 bigs. But if we bet 150 bigs and he only calls it once in every 4 times, we're getting 150 bigs. So we're getting 50 big blinds more just by jamming in and just getting called once. So the break-even point is we need to do that action 6 times in a row. He only needs to call once out of those 6 times for that to be at least an even play. And anything more, it starts to become a super more profitable play than only betting half pot. So I think just jamming in there is 100% the right play. So, Queen 9 off, we are going to open that from the button. Probably the absolute bottom of our range that we are opening. Queen 8 off, we are definitely folding. Queen 9, it's whatever. So ace, 9, 8, getting called by the big blind with a flush draw, which we do block with the queen of clubs. Very nice board. So we're going to roll. We kind of generally, with the having a second pair on an ace high board, we don't really need to be betting because obviously a lot of his aces are going to be calling. We do block that flush draw that he would be continuing with. We have, a lot of showdown value right here that we're not too happy about putting money in. So just check it over. You don't need to see bet every single time. And this way as well, by making sure that you don't always bet every single fucking hand, is when you do check back and you have nothing, they can't just start abusing that. They do need to check back, and you might accidentally turn a river pair or something that you wouldn't have if you just played such a straightforward strategy of bet when you have something, check when you don't, and then they're just going to bet on the turn and they're just going to fold out so much of your range. They actually have to be cautious here. This is what happens as well. Look at this. He bets into us on the turn because obviously we checked it back. Never going here in a million years. He's going to call that half pet, and obviously hitting trips. Pretty easy to just fucking, it's pretty easy to win when you're hitting trips. I'm going to size up, go for that 75% pet, and I believe oh, no, he does call. And he calls with ace 5. So, game's pretty easy when you turn trips. Ace 5, pretty standard call, pretty standard play. Unfortunate for him, but lucky for us. Pocket fours on the top right, we are going to have an under the gun raise and get call. We are going to call from the big blind. Ace 2, 3 rainbow board. We are checking and we are going to be calling a small or pretty much every single bet when a gut shot. When there is gut shots on board, and this is another thing I see a lot of people do in lower levels, which I believe is incorrect, is they don't call enough with gut shots, especially these small bets. Yes, obviously, there's only 4 cards that come out that do hit, and once they hit, it's not guaranteed we get paid. But especially when we are deep, obviously I'm not saying we're deep here with 100 bigs, but let's say we're like 300 bigs deep and they bet half pot in like a 3-bet pot and you have a gut shot. Generally, they're saying they have a pretty good hand. So if your gut shot does hit, yeah, you're not getting the immediate odds of, all right, if I call, I have 4 cards, therefore I have, this amount of percent of equity to hit on blah, blah, blah. But if you do hit, yeah, you're going to not only get paid the pot, you're going to get paid so much more than the pot is. Because generally, once again, if they're in that position and they're betting kind of big already in a 3-bet or a 4-bet pot, they obviously have a pretty strong hand, or they are going to be representing a pretty strong hand. So when you do hit, you are going to be getting paid the maximum, and therefore your implied odds are going to be pretty much launching everything into a call. So we are just going to be calling it off here, hoping to hit that gut shot. Obviously, 4 still could be the best hand. He could just have a whole bunch of junk, king, queen, queen, jack, stuff like that. King of spades on the turn, he is going to, I believe, check this one over. So at this point, he's pretty much saying he has basically a king X, and he's just trying to get to showdown just because he does have that king equity, or he's giving up and he just had 2 random cards like we thought. So we are going to check this one over just because we do have equity and he has king queen. So once again, 4s still could be the best hand. If we do hit a gut shot and he has like ace king there, we're going to get paid heaps of money. Pretty much cool. It's just unfortunate he managed to hit it on the turn. We're going to have kings on the top left. So we're going to raise 2.5 bigs when we are in that button position. Once again, just for reference, don't know if I've mentioned it yet, but under the gun 1, that kind of hijack position, we are going to generally aim for about a 2x open. Cutoff, we're doing a 2.3, and button, we are doing a 2.5. 5, 7, 8, all spades, not a ideal flop for us in the slightest. Getting called from the small blind, we do want to be a little bit more polar. If it is the big blind, we can kind of start to range bet, merge bet a bit more. But when it is a small blind calling, we either generally want to be turning it into either big bet or check. Obviously, this board, we're not too happy. We do have the equity with kings, so we are going to be calling if he does bet into us, but we don't really want to be bloating the pot with a hand that we're not super, super confident in, so we are going to check this one back. 6 of hearts on the turn just keeps getting worse and worse. So now obviously it's a 4-liner. He bets into us for a half pot. We do have the spade working for us, so we are going to call here. Never going to be folding, as well as obviously we do have an overpair. He could just be bluffing off with some random combo. Queen of clubs on the river, and he bets into us for another half pot. This is another point of thing that we were talking about in my other video, is not being scared to lose money. This is a snap call. Every single time it's a call. And yes, obviously it doesn't seem ideal. And yes, you aren't going to win a lot of the time because 5, 6, 7, 8, they could just have a random 9 with a spade in their hand they're betting. They could have 9, 10. They could have 2 pair. 2 pair might be a little bit thin to be betting. They could have a set. They could have a flush. There's a lot of hands that we aren't beating. But when they are only betting half the pot, we are putting in 6.7 bigs to win like 20, like 25-ish bigs, we only got to be right a quarter of the time. So 1 in 4 times we need to be correct for this to be break even. Anything more than 25% of the time we're winning with this call is profit. So we are obviously going to be snapping it in. I think a lot of the time they are going to be bluffing hands heaps worse, and he has Jack 10 of hearts here, so just absolute bricked his hand, and he is going to be betting in that one, trying to win the pot, and obviously we snake it. Jack 10 of hearts, honestly, should be 3-betting pre-flop. Probably lost him a little bit of money because he wouldn't have had that bluff attempt and fold to my 4-bet. But I believe that would have been a much better decision for him to just be 3-betting that one, especially out of position. Kings back to back, we are going to be raising 6.5 bigs, going to be getting called from the button to the initial 3-bet. I would be marking these guys as fish. You really shouldn't be ever flatting a 3-bet when you aren't the initial raiser, just because that initial raiser now has way more incentive to do a massive 4-bet, which in this case we are hoping he does, but unfortunately he just flats. 6-3 queen, very weird dynamic, multi-way 3-bet pot, and we are out of position. You're going to see this one a little bit more likely in your shitty home games, in your low stakes cash games live, especially you are going to see this. So probably a spot you do want to be paying attention to. He is going to check over to us, and we do have that aggression. I think especially with these two weaker players, they aren't going to be probing and they aren't going to be protecting their range and checking back and doing everything what they really should be. So I do think getting a bet in and just trying to get any equity from queens right now would be good. Just going for that small, super tiny bet of about 33%. You could even go smaller than this, but unfortunately this time I believe, no, we do get called. And I do see the aces on the right, do not worry. We are going to get called by the 10 of spades, obviously of the spade working for us. I did forget what big blind stack he was. For some reason, I assumed he was 100, so I believe we size up for this one. We go for 75%. No, we go 50%. So in this spot, usually if he was 100% stack, I would probably size up slightly more to about 60%, even 75%, really putting a lot of pressure on that ace queen suited, a lot of queen jack, queen x effectively. Pocket jacks once again kind of puts him into a weird spot where he's probably going to be folding, but he might be calling. But just putting a lot of pressure on those spots and trying to get an absolute maximum for obviously setting up for that river jam, assuming that it is a nice clean river. Probably sized up a little bit too much for this one because we want to do a thing called pot geometry. So pot geometry, it's a really weird term, but basically it's betting in a geometrical size. So if we bet half pot on the flop, half pot on the turn, and then half pot on the river, and it gets his whole stack in, that's pretty much ideal betting sizes from like a super GTO robot kind of way. Obviously, we do want to be playing around with sizes, kind of picking apart their range and kind of figuring out whereabouts they are sitting in that based on our bet sizes. But in theory, you should be every single decision should be super polarized, and every single decision should be getting it all in by the river with these super polarized ranges. But we're not robots; we don't do that. But a good rule of thumb of what we could be doing is aiming to do a geometrical size on the turn and a geometrical size on the river. So for 100 big blinds, I don't think it's bad because he's now going to be putting on, let's say, assume he has 80 big blinds in his stack. That would be about 70 big blinds in a stack. He puts in about 20. It's going to make the pot 70. So then when we jam 70 big blinds on the river, he's putting in about 60-50 big blinds to be able to get that. And that's going to be a half pot. I don't think this is making any sense. I kind of just was rambling on, so let me do this in a lot more of a concise way. Basically, turn and river bets, we want to be making the same percentage of the pot. So if we do a half bet size on the turn, we want to be doing a half bet size on the river, and we want that to be getting his entire stack in. So I kind of messed up. I didn't realize that his stack was so shallow. I ended up doing a half pot here, which obviously, if he calls this, it's only going to leave him with 30 bigs, and the pot is going to be sitting around that kind of 80-ish big, which is not going to be a half pot. So I would probably size down to about 40% here, and then that's going to leave him with about a 40% bet on the river, which we can just get him all in with, which obviously is going to price him in, which means maximum money. So if he was a full stack at this point, probably would size up to that 75%. And this time, unfortunately, he doesn't call. Aces, nothing really to report on, just 4-bet and a fold. Do you see a lot of people, though? They like to try slow play their aces. My kind of rule of thumb is obviously you don't want to be slow playing every single time. Otherwise, once again, it is an exploitable strategy. You do want to be mixing it in. But if we're out of position, I'm generally just a fan of getting it in pre-flop. Like, it's whatever, you might, yeah, sure, in theory, oh, I could get a little bit more, might be able to squeeze a little bit more big blinds out of someone, but the amount of money that you save from just not fucking up and having to play post flop out of position is so much more than the amount of little extra that you win just by maybe getting in one more bet and then check raising them and they fold. So just, yeah, out of position, start to, 5 bet jam, get it in, 4 bet, do these big bets. If you are in position, so let's say it's like a big blind, you raise on the button, big blind raises, even so, I'd probably start flatting maybe 25% of the time. If it's like a cold 4 bet, you can start flatting if you're the like 3 better. So cutoff raise, you're on the button, you 3 bet, big blind 4 bets. You can start now going a 50-50 jam or just calling range. But once again, it's never wrong to jam. If you have a good hand, get it in. It's never a bad thing. Ace King under the gun. We have a lot of good hands this session. We are just going to flop 2 pair. Going to be super polar, very quick end to the hand. So Ace King, obviously flopping 2 pair. We are blocking a lot. It's one of those weird things where you're pretty much not going to get called a lot of the time, so you might as well size up and try get called by the next best thing. And a lot of the time, you're going to understand that they're not going to have the next best thing, and they are going to fold. But those times where they do have the next best thing, you are saving yourself a lot of money from those random gut shots. So going back to what we were talking about before, especially at 150 big blinds deep, if he has Jack 10 of hearts here, or if he has, Queen 10, Queen Jack, any kind of gut shot with a backdoor flush, or even doesn't have to have a backdoor flush. You could just have Queen Jack, Jack 10, Jack Queen, stuff like that. It's going to be a pure call at a 33% bet. It's never a fold in theory, just because that gut shot rolls off. I have top 2 pair. We're getting stacks in. He's getting the whole stack, and it all started because of a 33% bet. Well, if I start sizing up to that over bet of the pot, it already immediately puts him in a weird spot because he does have to flick in that call some of the time, but now it cuts down all his gut shots to maybe only suited gut shots are the ones that call. And then from there, if it misses, puts him into a really weird spot. Or if he now has a heart draw, let's say the 7 of hearts rolls off on the turn, he still has the gut shot, but he has a flush draw. I bet over the pot again. He has to call, but he's getting a horrible price once again, and we are going to get so much more money. So you might as well go from trying to get the next best thing to call rather than doing these little dinky bets on a double Broadway flop. And that way, we're just going to make the most amount of money every single time. Ace King going to raise a lot of Ace Kings tonight. If would have flopped straight, would have been nice. But then once again, we're going to get Ace King blind versus blind. We are going to bump it up to 10 bigs and get called by the small blind. So flopping an ace, it's going to check straight over to us. Ace 9-2 with a flush draw can pretty much imply. You can pretty much do any single strategy here other than checking. I think kind of, going to your RNG roller and betting based off that is probably the safest play. I don't think it's a bad thing betting 5 big blinds for 25%. I don't think it's bad betting 10 big blinds, and I don't think it's bad betting 75 big blinds. I think it's starting to get out of hand when you are betting pot, especially when he has such a short stack. So I think going for that kind of half pot bet, putting him to a kind of weird spot is pretty fine. So half pot, he calls 8 of spades on the turn. Obviously, don't have a spade. Is neither here nor there. It's a 3-bet pot, obviously, is going to favor him, but he is such a short stack. SPR is only 1, so SPR meaning stack to pot ratio, which basically means however much money is in the pot is however much big blinds that a stack is behind. It's basically a 1-to-1 ratio because 40 in the middle, he has 40 in his hand. So if we lose 40 big blinds, like 1 stack to pot, it's not too bad getting it in when we think we are ahead with the ace king, which we are for a lot of the time. So when he checks it right over, once again, going for that geometric sizing of bet, we do want to be going for about just under half a pot, trying to really price him in. We go for 15 bigs. This way he calls, let's say it's 33-ish% of the pot. He calls, he's left with 25. In the middle, it's like 70 bigs. 25 into 70, once again, it's about a third of the pot. He is going to be priced in geometrically, and that is what we like. Ends up jamming it in, and we obviously snap it up. Ace Queen with a spade. I think I'm a bitch, so I cash out. Yep, and that is because I had a very, very bad session. Definitely shouldn't have just run it. Just who cares? It's whatever. So we end up winning that one, thankfully.